All right, if Amy, you can advance to that first slide. We will go ahead and get started. I am Gracie Whitley. I am from Region 10 Education Service Center, where I have the pleasure of working with Gibson Consulting on the Parent Involvement Survey. Today, we have the team from Gibson Consulting Group presenting the results from the 2020-21 Parent Involvement Survey in Special Education. Gibson has been supporting this work in Texas for the last 6 years. Amy Rappaport, she is here with us. She's the Director of Research at Gibson. She serves in the role of Project Director, coordinating all moving parts of the project, overseeing the team, and ensuring that all aspects of the work meet the highest standards of quality. Daniel is a research scientist at Gibson. On this project, he is responsible for the details of survey dissemination, collection, data analysis, and reporting. And Bacha Elbaum, who is contracted by Gibson as a subject matter expert and project advisor. She joins us as well today. Dr. Elbaum is a professor at the University of Miami, and she has extensive experience in the field of special education research and survey measurement. She consults with several states, including her own state of Florida, in analyzing and interpreting data collected around family school partnerships and special education services to students. So thank you to the Gibson team. And now we're going to turn it over to Amy Rappaport, and she will present the information today.
Thank you, Gracie. And I want to start today with thank yous to all of you who are on the call today. The results we're going to present today represent the hard work of many people, those on our research team, but also those from your districts on the ground. We fielded hundreds, maybe even thousands of phone calls from parents this year, and we supported your staff on the ground. But your staff was encouraging parents to respond all across the state. You guys sent invitations, you sent reminders, you helped complete surveys. You were just as busy trying to encourage parents to respond to help us obtain useful data this year. And so we wanted to start with just saying thank you for all of your hard work. The results we're going to present today are your results. They represent your parents in your districts. And we want this webinar to be a helpful tool so that when you get your results in the next few days for your district, you will be able to begin to explore what they might reveal and how they can help you make informed decisions in your district. So today we're going to give you a brief overview of Indicator 8, and then we'll review the survey itself. We'll go over the administration process and the results. The results this year, so last year, 2020-21, which is a tongue twister every time I say it, sets a new baseline for Indicator 8 in Texas. We implemented a new way of selecting districts to participate. We implemented a new survey, and that new survey necessitated a new Indicator 8 calculation. We'll review all of this, and then we'll go over the results. We'll also provide an overview of the district reports that you'll be receiving. We'll have time for questions, so please post them in the chat. And we're recording the webinar, so we'll be sharing this along with any Q&A that you can pass along to anyone who may have not been able to attend today. So state education agencies are required to report on 16 performance indicators as part of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, we all know as IDEA, IDEA. I've heard it pronounced both ways. You're all quite familiar with this, I'm sure. Number 8, one of the indicators, is why we're here today. So Indicator 8 is the percent of parents with a child receiving special education services who report that their child's school facilitated parent involvement as a means of improving services for children with disabilities. And while the survey exists for this federal monitoring and reporting purpose, we want results to be useful to your district. They're a reflection of the experiences and opinions of real parents, of real students in your schools. So today we'll review results for the state as a whole and show you how to read your district report, which you'll be receiving in the coming days. In Texas, we have over 600,000 students receiving special education services. It's not practical or necessary to survey all of them. Instead, we choose a sample of families who represent the state and measure Indicator 8 with that group. statistically, the result should approximate the true value of indicator 8 if we had surveyed everyone in the population. So the goal is to get input from a large number of parents, but also from a representative group of parents, so that we can generalize results from the responding sample to the full group of parents of students receiving special education services across the state. This year, Texas transitioned the indicator 8 process from a 6-year rotation, which in practice meant that districts would participate every 6 years, to a 3-year rotation, under which districts will participate every 3 years. And in making that change, we were able to align this survey process with TEA's monitoring and support cyclical reviews. So now your district will get results the year prior to a monitoring and support visit and the year after a visit. You'll also receive results from your families every 3 years instead of every 6 years, which we hope will provide more timely and actionable feedback. So starting this year, we designed and executed a new sampling process. First, we started by including any district with over 50,000 students enrolled. This was a rule that was applied historically for the last decade and that we choose to continue to implement. There's only about 20 of those districts in the entire state. Then we included every district that's getting a monitoring and support visit next school year in 22-23, and then every district that received a monitoring and support visit the year prior, 2019-20. This resulted in 417 districts included in the 2020-21 survey cycle. But still, we don't need to include every family in those districts. So from the 417 districts, we select campuses, and from those campuses, we select students. It's a little bit more complicated than just pure randomly selecting the campuses and the students. We place parameters on the process. So for example, the number of campuses and the number of students selected depends on the size of the district and the number of campuses and students in the district. And in constructing the sample, we have 3 goals, and these goals can sometimes compete with each other. The first bare minimum goal is we need to obtain a representative sample of families for reporting the indicator to the Office of Special Education Program. But like I said earlier, we really care about providing feedback at the LEA level that's useful and actionable. And so we increase the number of students selected from each district because we want you to be able to get a report of results from a large enough number of families that the data are useful. And finally, we don't want to place undue burden on district staff or families, so we don't want to select too many students. And so as you can see, these goals can sometimes compete with each other. So we did our best to balance these competing priorities and create a sampling process that sort of lets us check off all of those boxes. I won't get into the details, but I'm happy to answer questions. If you want to type your questions into the chat, we'll get to them at the end. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, out of the 417 districts, we selected over 85,000 students for this survey in over 3,000 schools across 400 districts in the state. I'm going to briefly talk about the survey itself. The survey was comprised of 10 items that we retained from prior years to go forward for measuring indicator 8. These have been included for several years, so they should be somewhat familiar. They're from the National Center for Special Education Accountability and Monitoring. We call it the NCSEM measure. We removed 7 items that were used in previous years for the indicator 8 measure. The 10-item scale is a more robust measure of the indicator. The 10-item scale was developed by a national team of experts. It was explicitly developed for measuring indicator 8, and it was validated with a national sample. And in fact, over 40% of the states use some version of the NCSEM scale in their indicator 8 reporting. And we also continued to include 2 items that have been in the previous survey that districts find useful, but that are not included in the indicator calculation. So I'm going to give you a brief review of some of the items. I'm not showing all 10, but here's 3 examples of the NCSEM items that are used for calculating the indicator, and the 2 additional items. And all of these items are provided with a response scale ranging from very strongly disagree to very strongly agree. The contents of this slide should be familiar to many of you, as you were the ones on the ground fielding the survey in your districts. Again, this was an exclusively online survey. Last year was the first year that we did an exclusively online survey, and it was successful, so we continued with that this year. We provided all of you with lists of selected students and unique PIN codes for each student, and we asked you to disseminate the information to parents. You sent invitations, you sent reminders, you distributed flyers, you called families. I'm sure you remember it all, and it was a lift. You did an amazing job. If you recall, we gave you the option of either sending the invitations and information directly yourselves, or you could send us contact information and we would send the information out to your families. We also asked you to use the Gibson portal, which included links to materials and provided helpful templates. And it also contained the live response rate dashboard. Again, we were impressed with this year's response rate. We received over 15,000, almost 16,000 completed surveys, which is kind of amazing, which was an 18.5% response rate. And you can see on this slide the response rates from the prior 3 years. Keep in mind that response rate from pre-COVID years, we included both paper and online surveys. And so we're getting an 18.5% response rate with exclusively online, which we were really proud of. Almost all of the 417 districts participated. In fact, 94% had at least one parent submit a survey. And I want to just sort of remind you that a large proportion of these districts are very small and had very few students on their list at all. So receiving even 1 or 2 or 3 responses does signal participation, important participation. If you're curious about the response rate difference, because we were, we found that districts that sent their own communications versus those that shared contact information with us, the response rates were 15% among the districts that did their own outreach and 22% among the districts that we distributed invitations and reminders and emails. And we were happy to see that our support strategies were successful and that we were able to assist districts and be a resource to get the word out and get more families to respond. All right, and we are just about ready to talk about results. Before we look at the indicator result, we want to talk about the representativeness of the sample. So as I noted earlier, the purpose of sampling is to collect data from a smaller number of people that you need from among the larger group to try to approximate what the result would be if you collected data from everyone. Representativeness is an essential piece of looking to see if the resulting estimate comes from a group of people who look like the population you're trying to estimate for. We can only do this, one of the limitations of this is we can only do this for the characteristics for which we have data from the population. And TEA does have data on the population, and so we can compare the characteristics of the respondents to the characteristics of the population on certain characteristics. So here's an example. I'm just going to start with the top row, which is the gender of the student. Those whose parents responded to the survey, 66% were for a male student. This is the gender of the student, not the gender of the parent. And across all students in the state receiving special education services, 2/3, 66% are male. And then the next few rows are race, ethnicity, and compared to the population of students receiving services, the responding sample was somewhat over-representative of white students, with 32% of the sample compared to 27% of the population, and somewhat underrepresentative of Black families. Let me take a look at that table from you. And the other characteristic that we can look at is the student's primary exceptionality and the representativeness in the sample compared to prevalence in the population. And I won't go through this one row by row, but generally you can see that every disability category is represented in the survey sample, similarly to its prevalence in the population. And this is important context for interpreting the results. One more characteristic. Now, this one we do not know about the population. We can only look at the sample. So we have 13% of surveys completed in Spanish. While we don't know what percent of parents in the population would answer in Spanish, we just don't have that data anywhere. We do know that the percentage of surveys completed in Spanish has decreased over the last few years, specifically since in 1920, we shifted to an online only survey. And so I think this is a signal for us. We need to increase our efforts a bit to continue to gather input from parents whose first language is Spanish. All right, now that we understand our sample of responding parents, let's look at the results. First, about how we get the results. So to calculate indicator 8, we first convert parent responses to a 6-point scale. So they answer on the scale of very strongly disagree to a scale of very strongly agree. And we convert those responses from to a 1 for very strongly disagree, all the way up to a 6 for very strongly agree. And we then calculate the mean response for each parent across all those 10 items. In theory, the mean can range from 1 if a parent answers very strongly disagree to all the items, or their mean can be a 6 if they answer very strongly agree to all items. In reality, most parents' mean score is somewhere in the middle. The overall mean for the state as a whole was 4.5. Oh, I'm sorry, that's missing on the slide. I see that now. So we have the overall mean. Every parent has a mean. Now we need to apply some cutoff for which means count as a parent reporting that the district's facilitated parent involvement. We call this a threshold or a cutoff. And TE determined this year that the threshold would be a 4.0 or higher on the 6-point scale. So we simply take the number of parents whose mean was 4.0 or higher and divide by the total number of parents or respondents. And we do this across the entire state for the state level, but we can also do it within a district or within an ESC. One more time, I'm just going to remind everybody this calculation is different than how it's been calculated in the past. The questions are different, the calculation is different, the standard or the threshold is different. And so we just can't responsibly compare results from this year to prior years. And we know it's natural. It's a natural desire to look at results over time and see how things are changing. But we want to encourage you to resist that temptation because this is just a new baseline. As we go forward, the same survey will be used in future years, and we really can look at change using the same measure. So here are our results. Along the horizontal axis here, you'll see all of the possible mean values on that scale of 1 to 6. The height of the bar represents how many respondents had a given mean. So the most common mean you can see here was 4.0 and followed by 6.0. The vertical red line shows you the Texas standard or the cut point at 4.0. And so the percentage of responses with a mean at or above 4.0 this year for the 2020-21 school year was 73%. We can look at these results by characteristics of subgroups. So on the left-hand side, you see indicator 8 results by race ethnicity. And on the right-hand side, you see indicator 8 results by school level. And what we can see in these patterns is that on the left-hand side, we have a lower percentage of Black or African-American parents who have an indicator 8 result that is above the 4.0 threshold compared to other race ethnicity subgroups. And on the right-hand side, we see a common pattern. We see this across different states and across different years, that lower proportions of middle and high school parents score at or above the indicator 8 threshold compared to parents from elementary schools. Each district has their own indicator score based on the parents from that district who responded. This slide shows the distribution of the indicator 8 results across the 417 districts that participated. Along the horizontal axis, now you have the percent, the indicator 8 result, and it ranges from 0 to 100, but as you can see, none of the districts had 0 or even 10 or 15 or 20% at or above the threshold. Everybody started around, I think 20% is the lowest. Along the vertical axis is the number of districts with that score. And so most districts, the most common result for districts was having an indicator result between 67 and 82%. We will be distributing your district's results in the next few days. One note is that we only generate a district report if more than 5 families responded. And this is for 2 reasons. First, responses from only 2 or 3 or 1 parent or families creates an unstable result. And if you add 1 or 2 responses in, the result can change dramatically. And second, we also have to be respectful and responsible to preserve respondent confidentiality in very small districts. So while 5 or more is not a magic number, and I admit that, it strikes a reasonable balance between statistical uncertainty and also small sample calculations with the desire to provide feedback to as many districts as possible. So if you are in one of the districts with fewer than 5 responses, your district's data is still used. It's used in 3 places. Your district's data, it aggregates into the state data, of course, but we also create one report that we call a masked district report. So all the districts that had fewer than 5 respondents get grouped into the masked district report. And third, all of the responses within a given ESC are aggregated into that ESC report. So if you are one of these districts, you can look at your ESC report, you can look at the masked district report. So what do these reports look like? This is for those districts with 5 or more. This is kind of a zoomed out picture. It's front and back of a page, but I've put them side by side, and I'm going to zoom in and walk you through each of these. You're going to all get a report that looks something like this. I've gone ahead and masked this district, so yours won't have those little gray boxes on it. So I'm going to start with the table on the top left, and this is similar to the reports from previous years if you have received one in previous years. Here we show the number of students included in the sample in your district in the current year. That's called surveys sent. And the number of parents or families in your district who responded, surveys received. And as you can see, so in this district, 2,332 students were included in the sample and 269 responded. The response rate is just simply the response number over the total included in the sample, which in this district is 12%. And then we show the proportion completed in Spanish and the proportion completed in English, and the total number of campuses from which those students with survey completions are situated. So this district had responses coming from students across 68 different schools. And we added this as to help show how broad ranging the feedback is. So we wanted to show if you have 80 schools in your district, are responses coming from 5 of those schools, are responses coming from 60 of those schools? It helps to understand where the responses are coming from. And then the column on the right-hand side provides the same information for the state as a whole to help compare. Next, we show the representativeness of the sample in the district that responded compared to the population in the district. So the darker bars are the characteristics of the respondents, and the lighter teal bars are the characteristics of the students in the district receiving services. So just as earlier in the presentation, we described the statewide sample characteristics compared to the state's population characteristics. When you get your district results, you can look at the characteristics of the survey respondents compared to the district's population of students receiving services. So for this district, what you can see is that there are fewer Hispanic Latino respondents compared to their district population. You can see that here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. And they also had more parents of male students than the prevalence of male students in the population, as examples. Okay, next we get to the indicator 8 result. So in this figure, that gray hill, that little mountain in the background, that's the distribution of the district-wide indicator 8 results that I showed you earlier. It's a little bit of a smoothed out version of the results I showed you earlier. The dark blue line is the result for this district. So 63% of parents in this district scored at or above that mean of 4.0. The mustard yellow line is the statewide result I shared earlier, the 73%. So this district's indicator 8 result was lower than the state average. And as you can see from the distribution, this district was probably in the lower half, maybe even the lower third of the state. And the second page, we show each of the 10 items on the survey. And for each item, we provide 2 different pieces of information. On the left-hand side, you'll see the overall percent of parents that responded positively with a 4.0 or higher on that item. On the right-hand side, you see the full distribution of responses to that item. So how many parents provided a response of very strongly disagree, disagree, agree, strongly agree. And I'm going to zoom in on one of those and talk you through it a little bit more. So this item at the ARD meeting, we considered accommodations and modifications that my child would need. If you look here on the right, this figure shows the frequency with which respondents answered very strongly disagree, very strongly agree, etc. The higher the bar, the more parents who responded that way. So on this item, you can see, yes, 88% on the left were agree or higher, 4.0 or higher. But here on the right-hand side, you can see a little bit more detail. And if you compare this item that was strongly positive to this item, I was given information about organizations that offer support for parents of students receiving special education services. You see a shift in the distribution of responses. More parents are responding agree compared to very strongly agree, and have moved into the negative side of the scale. So the intent here is to give you more information about the patterns of response. It's not just about the indicator score, and it's not just about the percent of parents who answer positive. It may be that 78% or 85% of parents respond positively to a given item, but schools can look and districts can look at the prevalence of responding negatively or the prevalence of general agreement compared to strong agreement and identify areas where they may want to work to improve. And finally, the last page, which I didn't even show you yet, this includes the 2 items that I haven't discussed. These are not included. These are not used for indicator 8 reporting, but they provide helpful and useful information to school districts. The presentation of the results is the same as the indicator 8 items, but they're not used in the indicator 8 calculation. So those were the results from this year. I know you're all eager to get your own district's results, and you'll be getting them in the coming days. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Gracie to talk about next steps. Gracie, did you want to present anything here?
I was trying to find, I apologize, the button there. What happens next? The reports will be sent to our ESCs, who will in turn share those reports with our LEAs. Once you receive those reports, you are welcome to contact Gibson or Region 10 with, I apologize, my video's not on, with any questions that you may have. So as Amy mentioned, in the next few days, we will be putting the final polish on those reports and get all of that organized and sent to the school family community engagement representatives in each ESC, who will in turn share those reports with the LEAs. Any additional resources are noted here on this slide that you will be able to access once you receive the PDF copy of the presentation, as well as the recording. We do want to highlight that there are resources especially available on the SpedTech's website that can help you support your efforts in building those relationships within your LEAs, as far as building capacity of educators, as well as addressing needs of parents. And SpedTech is a resource just in general. If you have any questions about special education in general, and we will not want to, of course, forget Partners Resource Network. They have a wealth of resources that are available as well. At this juncture, I'm going to see if there are any questions that Daniel and Amy would like to address at this time. I saw that he was addressing several questions as we moved throughout the presentation. Are there any additional questions, Daniel, that you noticed?
So I responded through the chat and the Q&A to all of the questions I've received, I think. I don't know if we want to highlight some of those in the kind of say them out loud, or if that's kind of sufficient.
Well, at this juncture, I think what we had mentioned earlier, we are going to be taking these questions and creating a Q&A document. So many of the questions we're able to answer. There are some that we may have to pause a moment to research and provide some additional input. So the questions that were mentioned during this presentation will come in a Q&A document that will be shared with you as well. And again, we'll get this information to our school family community engagement representatives at our ESCs, who will be able to share this information with the LEAs in their area. For contact information, once you get that, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us. Our contact information is noted here on the slide, and it will be in the PDF document as well. So allow us a few days to put the final polish on the reports, and then we'll be getting that to your representatives as soon as we can so that they can share. And we just want to say on behalf of Gibson and Region 10 Education Service Center, as well as Texas Education Agency, thank you so much, y'all, for your hard work in helping to address all logistics associated with the survey, working with parents, being available to provide those reminders, because all of the work we do, we cannot do it without your support and cooperation. And so for that, we do say thank you. And thank you so much for joining us on today. Gibson Consulting, is there anything else that we need to address at this point, or can we transition to a close?
I don't have anything to add. I was unable to monitor the chat, so I didn't see what people were talking about. So Dan, I'll leave it to you if there's anything we want to add.
No, it was relatively few questions, and I think we've been able to get to everything, and having the Q&A document at the end, I think, will also serve that purpose.
Okay.
We're happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to contact us. These are our personal email addresses, but they can be hard to remember. We also have a general line. It's support@gibsonconsult.com. You can also email us there.
All righty, and I think Daniel dropped in the link to the survey schedule. If you're wondering if your turn is coming up again this coming year, that schedule is there, and it was shared earlier in the survey process as well. So at this point, we are going to bring this webinar to a close, and we're going to say thank you so much, and we hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.